great. Thank you very much, Gary. Mainly due to the support I've had from my new colleagues here and the board. They've been incredibly supportive throughout that time. As you'd expect, meeting people, new colleagues is a priority when you go into a new company. And I'm proud to say that by my 3-month anniversary on Saturday, I'll have met every single person within Hansard in the Isle of Man, and by Zoom for my colleagues that are in our overseas jurisdictions. So that's been one of the best parts of joining the business, meeting my new colleagues. And the other part, of course, is actually learning about the business. So I've spent a lot of time with colleagues, again, reading up and understanding the business so that I can really look to understand where to position improvements for the future. Trying to do a long story short, originally born in England, sort of outside London, and as a 16-year-old boy straight from school joined NatWest. Spent 21 years with NatWest as my first company, most of that onshore. And then the last couple of years I was lucky enough to get a role here in the Isle of Man. I applied for a job in Guernsey, and they said, "You've been successful, but we'd like you to work in the Isle of Man." So it wasn't quite what I expected. I had a 2-year initial tour of duty, and here I am, I think 21 years later, although I have had a period away in the meantime. So once I left, I joined NatWest here, as I was saying, in 1999 in the Isle of Man, but then moved on to work for other companies, Zurich being quite notable given my current role, and Close Brothers Group. And then in 2009, wanted to take up an expatriate post as part of my career, and was fortunate enough to get a chance to work as the country head of corporate banking for Barclays in Mauritius. And from there, I was able to meet clients and work all over the world. I've spent a lot of time in South Africa. And then I transitioned sectors from banking, which I'd done for most of my career, to fund administration, trust and corporate services, the largest provider in Mauritius. We were over 300 people. And did that role for 4 years, including opening new offices in Singapore, South Africa, Kenya. Spent a total of 8 years working in Africa and across the world, and then decided that the time was right to come home, or at least what I consider my home here in the Isle of Man. And so about 18 months ago, we returned back to the Isle of Man. Well, look, of course people said to me, "You must be mad, to leave the Southern Hemisphere and the weather, for example," which is always mentioned in connection with the Isle of Man, to leave the weather in Mauritius and come back to the Isle of Man. I mean, and the weather is what it is wherever you are, and you can choose to stay there, or you can choose to go somewhere else if you don't like it, I guess. But it's really not a big part of day-to-day life for me. What I value about the Isle of Man, particularly when I compare it to the countries that I've worked in that you've just mentioned there, is the peace and security from a day-to-day living perspective for both my family and myself. It's quite a relief to get back to a place like that. And from a work perspective, no matter where you work in the world, it's still it's the same hard work. But it takes me 20 to 25 minutes to get home without much traffic, which again is a big contrast to some of the places I've worked in the past overseas, where it could take an hour and a half to travel in one way by car. So I thoroughly enjoyed coming back here, and the lockdown, if you like, the pandemic travel restrictions have basically given us the opportunity to explore more of the island as a family. Well, in fact, rediscover the places that we used to love before we left nearly 10 years ago now.
And of course, your children will be different ages now.
Well, when they left, my youngest was 6, so she's 16, and my 2 eldest are 25 and 24. Again, doesn't mean it's not meant to be a promotion video for the Isle of Man, but I think that by coming back here, they've both found fulfilling full-time employment. I think they'd have struggled in the COVID environment in the UK. So feel quite blessed to have been able to bring them back here, where they're now enjoying their own careers. I'd like to think so. I'd like to think that I bring different experience and a fresh pair of eyes, which is important in any company. I'm actually a firm believer that companies should change their CEOs every 5 to 7 years. I think that fresh pair of eyes, a new approach, and coming from an external environment, perhaps even from a different industry, adds a lot of value to a company. In terms of similarities, well, I think that financial services companies have, they share generic characteristics. We all have a product or a service that we need to sell. Where do we want to sell it? At what price do we want to sell it? These are all just common factors. So sometimes it helps to draw on comparison with other industries, other financial services companies. But at the same time, I've got to learn about this particular sector. So what's different? Mainly the financial metrics of a life insurance company are vastly different to that of a bank. So that's the area where, again, I'm working with my actuarial colleagues to get a good understanding of what success looks like, in terms of financial metrics when we report to the market, for example, as a listed company. And I guess that was a big attraction for me in coming to Hansard, was to manage a listed company. Yeah, look, short term, we basically, the company has spent lots of time building a new product. So it's a new look product for Hansard, and we aim to distribute that through differing channels that we've used in the past. So that's quite a departure for us, and it's sort of moving the business model within the life sector. We've also invested a significant amount in our technology to be able to support that new product, and so we're currently exploring the markets in which that product has the best opportunity. We've identified the initial markets which we're going to roll out into very shortly. So it's really, I guess, my role is probably helping to complete some of the projects that are already in flight when I arrived, which is well worth doing. Looking further ahead, I guess I see my role as exploring broader opportunities for those products, distribution channels and markets, but also looking at technology. So increasingly, fintech is mentioned, and then insurtech is now being mentioned as a subsector of that. The Isle of Man government are putting a significant amount of money to one side to support investment in technology and attracting technology companies to the Isle of Man to support the life insurance industry. And I'm very keen for Hansard to play a very active role in that and to support that development in the years ahead. So I see technology changing the sector again in the coming years. It's a fair question, and so certainly something to consider. What we will do though is approach market research in a quite systematic way. So we've already commissioned consultant reports to identify a small number of markets where we might want to invest and take our products. We're also looking at developing existing products or developing existing products to suit the regulatory requirements of either new markets or markets that are becoming increasingly regulated. So that requires changes in our approach and how we're able to, book those products onto a system hence our investment in technology. I think maybe probably a different way of answering the first part of your question about new pair of eyes coming into the company is that one of the projects I've inherited is a culture initiative where we're working with a London-based firm to understand what the current culture of the company looks like and whether we would like to change that and change the behaviours in the company to better achieve the corporate objectives and ambitions of the firm going forward. So that's quite a significant investment in a very interesting project. Culture can be quite intangible, so we're really working to understand what it looks and feels like for Hansard going forward, and so that's going to be an exciting project.